Today we're talking about intelligent design. Did God create us? And as you know, my name is Morgue and I am a survivor of RTS, or religious trauma syndrome. So I grew up in a household where intelligent design was very much a part of the indoctrination into creationism. Now, we're going to be taking a look at something very specific, though, today, because this is from the point of view of a neurosurgeon, Michael Egnor, and I've talked about him before, because he's a very interesting case. And so this neurosurgeon, Dr. Michael Egnor, says that there is evidence for intelligent design in the brain. And the reason why I talk about Michael Egnor a lot is because he's not your typical creationist or, someone throwing around just random ideas. He's actually a very intelligent individual. And he began as an atheist, and through his work in neurosurgery and related fields, he came to the conclusion that the brain could not account for mind and consciousness. And so he left scientific materialism. He left the idea that reality is only matter. And now he's subscribes to panpsychism, or even idealism, which says that mind is a fundamental attribute of reality, or he even goes so far as sometimes to think that we are all ideas in the mind of God. So Michael Egnor is very right to go from to ditch materialism and to say that the brain cannot account for mind and consciousness. That's absolutely correct. But there's always this mistake that people make, is they go from atheism and belief in materialism straight over to some monotheistic belief or some religious belief like Christianity, or some sort of creator God, like as if there's a one or the other, and there isn't a one or the other. As we're going to see, and as we're going to discuss today, there is a third choice, the choice of reason. Now, we're going to be looking at this because, as I said, Michael Egnor is a fairly intelligent individual, just the unfortunate that he makes this odd choice to go right away to religion rather than understanding that there are other options. So we're going to look at his arguments for intelligent design, that the world was, intelligently designed by a creator or something along these lines, and how he talks about evidence for this in the brain. So we see this here, that Michael Egnor has written an article on mindmatters.ai. And the title is, yes, there is evidence for the brain, yes, there is evidence for the intelligent design of the brain. It says, if our brains were not intelligently designed, we would have no reason to believe anything that our senses tell us. So let's jump right into this and see why neurosurgeon Michael Egnor thinks that there is evidence for intelligent design in the brain. And let's see if that really holds up. Let's see if that's true. And let's see if Hyperianism can account for what Michael is talking about. This is a big topic, of course. The brain, like all of biology, is obviously intelligently designed. Well, I mean, that's has a lot of presuppositions built into it. So he's starting off by saying that all of biology, including the brain, is obviously intelligently designed. So from the elegant coordination of neural activity between neurons and brain regions to the remarkable law-like behavior of individual molecules and atoms that comprise neurons and neurotransmitters, the brain carries the unmistakable fingerprint of a designer, and he puts designer in a capital D, so you're talking about God. Now, here's the thing that you have to look at here. Just because there is elegant coordination of neural activity, law-like behavior of individual molecules and atoms, that does not mean it contains the unmistakable fingerprint of a designer, capital D, or God. What this means is that this exhibits pattern and rational law and rational behavior. There is a huge difference between pattern, law, and behavior and an intelligent, conscious designer that decides consciously to create something in a certain way. And that's what we're going to be looking at here today. The big difference between, on one hand, you have atheistic materialist science where everything is just a process of random mutations and random processes. Now, Michael Egnor is correct to say that that could not have possibly produced the brilliant pattern of the brain. But because you abandon that does not mean one must immediately go to the fact that, oh, well, then it must have been intelligently designed by a creator God. Now, our position is that this is a mathematical reality, a reality of living mathematics that has necessary existence. And this is a reality of mind that begins in an unconscious state. In other words, that reality is inherently mathematical, rational, and alive in terms of living energy. If you're not familiar with this, I explain this a lot in my other books and videos, but I don't have time to get into all that here today. But in a nutshell, our position is that this is a mathematical realm of mind. The reason why that things exhibit the behavior or structure of pattern and law-like behavior is because mathematics is literally pattern. That's what mathematics is. Mathematics is pattern. The reason why reality reflects pattern is because reality is mathematical. And so of course it's going to be patterned because mathematics is patterned itself. The reason why also molecules, etc., behave in law-like ways is because mathematics, reason, is law. It is a rational law, a rational rule set. In Hyperianism, there's only one ultimate law, and that is the principle of sufficient reason, which generates all other laws from its foundational source as being the ground, the ontological ground of existence. So keep this in mind as we go forward. So anyway, Michael Egnor is saying that obviously the brain is intelligently designed. Look, it's has an elegant pattern. It follows law-like behavior. None of this implies an intelligent designer, by the way. If we were to look at the brain and stamped upon it said, made by Jesus, well then maybe we should start taking this intelligent design thing seriously. Because if you think about it, why would an intelligent designer, this super being, like if we're talking about typical monotheistic Christianity, why not do something like that? I mean, it would end the debate right there. Why not just inscribe on the moon, made by God? I think that would be much more of a clear indication of intelligent conscious design rather than a world that exhibits pattern but has a lot of errors in it, in that errors as far as not like logical errors, but in elegance. There are many ways that the body could have been designed better. There are many examples of things that are just very out of place. If you look at all of like the reproductive system and the digestive system and all these different elements that they work and they work well, but they have a lot of issues as well that clearly an intelligent, perfect, conscious designer could have changed. So anyway, my point being, the fact that the brain exhibits pattern and law-like behavior is not ipso facto obvious evidence for a designer. It's evidence that reality follows pattern and law-like behavior. That's what it is. If there was made by Jesus stamped on it, that would be clear indication of intelligent designer. Do you see that? I'm just trying to get across the big leap that one makes from, oh, pattern, some conscious being must have made it. No, reality is itself pattern, creating more and more, exploring the different patterns that it can generate, not consciously, but unconsciously, as it follows its internal mathematical motion, which it rationally must do. So anyway, but there is another common sense way to infer design of the brain that is simple and I think quite convincing. It is based on our belief that our perceptions and concepts accord with truth. To see how this points to intelligent design of the brain, consider a very compelling argument for God's existence proposed by philosopher Richard Taylor in his book Metaphysics. Thomist philosopher Edward Fesser has a nice synopsis and commentary. I paraphrase Taylor's argument. All right, so here's an argument for intelligent design, apparently. Imagine that you're on a train in England and you see a collection of stones on a hillside that says, "The British Railways welcome you to Wales." In theory, there would be two ways that the stones could be arranged that way. One way would be if they were deliberately arranged by an intelligent agent to convey the message that you are entering Wales. The other way would be that wind and rain randomly moved the stones so they resemble a meaningful message, but in fact had no intelligent source. The likelihood of either possibility is irrelevant to the argument. Now, you could believe, based on the stones, either that you were in fact entering Wales, or you could not believe that. Whether you believe is also irrelevant to the argument. Taylor's point is that you could not justifiably believe that the stones came to be by random arrangement and at the same time believe they were conveying the message that you are entering Wales. That is, you are only justified in believing semantic content conveyed by matter if the arrangement of the matter is intelligently designed. Okay, so long story short, he's saying, imagine that you're on a train going to England and you see a collection of stones on the hillside and it says, the British Railways welcome you to Wales, arranged in stone on a hill. Now, either the stones randomly arranged, right? Is that what they say here? I want to make sure that I'm giving their argument correct. Yes, they would say you could imagine that wind and rain randomly move the stones so that they resemble this meaningful message, or that some intelligent agent placed the rocks there in that specific order. So, and I'll get to their analogy, but their basically argument is showing the difference between, say, random atheistic, random mutation and evolution and random processes versus an intelligent designer. Now, yeah, their example is absolutely right, but it's a very, 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 very bad analogy, because when you go out and look at the patterns in the world, you do find brilliant patterns, beautiful patterns, spectacular patterns, patterns that could in no way be explained by random chance or accident. However, you don't find things that are obviously created by an intelligent agent, like the words, "We welcome you to Wales." You see the big difference? There is a difference between the brilliant intricacies of a plant and its process of blooming and germinating and replicating and the different beautiful patterns, that fractal patterns that these different plants exhibit, and then a message that says, God was here. There is a huge difference. What these plants and beautiful patterns and fractal evidence show is that reality is based on pattern. This is not clear evidence for an intelligent designer. It's evidence totally against randomness, and it doesn't rule out the possibility of an intelligent designer, but it's a very bad argument to use as a clear indication of intelligent design. Do you see the huge leap one is taking from seeing pattern to, oh, an intelligent conscious being designed this? No, because again, if you're using the example of made in Wales, we should be able to, flip the plan over and have like made by God stickers on the back of them. I'm joking, but you get the idea. That is evidence for intelligent design. This is a very bad argument. But now, granted, it is an analogy, but it's a deceptive analogy. So it is an analogy, but it's a deceptive analogy, trying to make you think nature exhibits things that it does not. Nature absolutely 100% exhibits pattern that cannot be explained by randomness. Absolutely. No argument there. It does not exhibit explicit indications of intelligent design, such as, in the analogy, rocks spelling out a message. No. So, Taylor now draws an analogy to the neurological processes of our brain. We believe the message conveyed by our neurophysiology by the arrangement of our neurotransmitters and our neurons. If these brain functions evolved by Darwinian evolution, I want to also remind you all that I am reading this for the first time, so I just skimmed these before going live with these. So I'm reading this along with you. If these brains functions evolved by Darwinian evolution, that is, they came to exist as a result of unintelligent random heritable variation and natural selection, then you could have no justified belief that the perceptions and concepts generated via your brain have genuine meaning, It would be irrational to ascribe semantic content to a material process that lacks an intelligent designer. Okay. So here, this is a good point. So they're arguing something a little bit different. So what I said previously about the rocks being arranged into a message and all that, that's an argument that a lot of intelligent designers and a lot of creationists use. Not the specific rock one, but ideas like that, okay? So I want to point that out, and that's still very important. However, they are, okay, granted, okay, they are talking about something a little bit different here. So what they're talking about is a little more subtle. So let me explain. Again, what I said before applies to a lot of intelligent designer arguments, but what they're talking about is something different. So what he's doing here is drawing an analogy of neurological processes of our brain, okay? We believe that the message conveyed by our neurophysiology, by the arrangement of our neurotransmitters and neurons. So if they function and evolved by Darwinian evolution, that is, they came to exist as a result of unintelligent, random variation and natural selection, then you could have no justified belief that the perceptions and concepts generated via your brain have genuine meaning. It would be irrational to ascribe semantic content to a material process that lacks an intelligent designer. So what they're basically saying is that if your brain was formed by processes defined by Darwinian evolution, which are random processes, then you couldn't believe that the perceptions and concepts generated by your brain have actual genuine meaning, because it would be irrational to ascribe semantic content to a material process that lacks an intelligent designer. Okay, but this is what is... Okay, well, let me not get ahead of myself, because let's see the rest of their argument, and then I'll comment. So Taylor uses this argument to argue for God's existence. When we believe that our perceptions and concepts point to the truth, we implicitly acknowledge the existence of God who designed them. So this is very... I don't think that Michael Egnor is trying to be deceptive. I don't think so. I mean, maybe he is. I don't know the guy. But I would think that he's not trying to be deceptive. But the conclusions that are being reached for don't follow. And it's deceptively so, because it kind of seems like they do, but they don't. So what they're saying here is that if we believe that our perceptions and concepts point to truth, we implicitly acknowledge the existence of God who designed them, because their argument is that you have to have a brain that was designed by an intelligent designer for perceptions and concepts to point to truth. So if you think that your perceptions and concepts are true, then you acknowledge that a God exists who designed them. If the neurophysiology that generates our perceptions and concepts were not intelligently designed, we would have no justified reason to believe that they point to truth, any more than we would have justified reason to believe that an unintelligent conglomeration of stones tells us where we are in England. It is a quite good argument for God's existence, and of course it is also a good argument for the intelligent design of the brain. Okay, lot to unpack here. So again, here's the problem. A big leap is being made. You're going from the brain being a process of randomness following Darwinian evolution, random mutation, natural selection, jumping all the way to intelligent designer. Are they correct that the brain could not have arisen in a coherent way if it was by random processes? Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's totally right. It does not mean that it was intelligently designed. That conclusion doesn't follow. You see this false dichotomy of either it's one or the other? No, it's not. It is not one or the other. Just because something is not a product of a random accident and random mutation does not mean that it was designed. That's a huge leap. So what's going on here is that, once again, reality is inherently pattern, because reality is mathematics. So reality is pattern, reality is mathematics. There is randomness plays no part in Hyperianism and ontological mathematics. In Hyperianism, randomness does not exist. True randomness, okay? There's pseudo-randomness. When you roll the die, that's pseudo-randomness. When you go to even a random number generator, that's pseudo-randomness. True randomness in Hyperianism does not exist and is an impossible state, because randomness is the lack of pattern. Reality is pattern. And so evolution absolutely occurs in Hyperionism. I want to make that very clear. Evolution absolutely occurs in Hyperionism, but not Darwinian random evolution. Instead, it is dialectical teleological evolution. All right. So without getting too much into it, yes, evolution occurs, and this evolution is inherently facilitated by the fact that reality is mathematical frequency patterns interacting with each other and forming structures. Structures form via a dialectical process, which means it's a clash of opposites. The reason why it's a clash of opposites is because mathematics inherently contains opposites within itself. So you have structures combining dialectically. Some of these structures are stable, some of them are not stable, and the ones that are stable continue, the ones that are not no longer persist. Now this reality continues to do that, and it evolves in this way, from simple atoms to molecules to complex structures, the universe, galaxies, stars, planets, eventually environment, avatars, life. All this ultimately stems from a dialectical evolution that is also teleological, which means it is goal-oriented, but this goal isn't conscious. Now, I want to also remind you all that all this process is an unconscious process. This is mind. These are frequency patterns interacting, but it's not consciously designed. It is unconsciously generated by unconscious forces. Now, these forces are mind. They are in motion, and they are interacting, and they are causing development and evolution, and it is pattern. It's guided by rational law. It is in no way random. However, it is an unconscious process. It's not a conscious designer that has, no, I think I'm gonna make the earth today. I'm kidding, but you know what I mean. It's nothing like that. That's why you don't have things like made by God stamped on the back of things. I'm again joking, but you get the idea. If there was an intelligent designer, they could clearly make it the case. This is a process that is unconscious evolution. So pattern is exhibited, but the patterns are not consciously aware, and so that's why it takes billions of years of this process, because it's a very slow process, and the reason why you don't have clear indications of intelligent design in things, because there is no conscious design. It is unconsciously generated following a rational rule set, because reality is mathematical. Reality is based on pattern. Consciousness eventually evolves and develops through us. Hi, we can become conscious of ourselves as the force of reality, and that is the next step of evolution for humanity. It's what we talk about, hyper-awareness, the level of beyond self-awareness. And it actualizes through the individuals who attain it. It is the literal next step of evolution when considering mental evolution. So, okay, so there's a lot to say here. So in addition to this, we have the idea that the brain generates pattern, or brain arises by pattern. This is perfectly fine in our system. We don't need an intelligent designer for this. Now, further, they go on to say that when we believe that our perceptions and concepts point to the truth. Now, this is not something that has to be adhered to at all in a certain sense. So first of all, well, let's break it down. Perceptions. Our sensory perceptions, no, they don't point to truth. Our sensory perceptions evolved for survival. And the brain acts as a filtering mechanism, and it localizes our sentient field to that which is in our local environment and filters out unnecessary data so that we can be aware of predators, so that we can have, adaptation with regard to environment, so that we can do better in competition and mating and reproduction. All of the brain, what the brain does is it filters, limits, and conditions true reality, the realm of mind, the frequency domain, and restricts our sentient field to a local domain, a very small area, so that we can be aware of predators, prey, hunters, all that stuff. So our perceptions don't reflect truth. They reflect adaptation and survival. And by the way, if there is an intelligent designer, isn't that even more evidence against there being an intelligent designer? Because clearly our sensory apparatus does not give us truth. Clearly it doesn't. And this is not even controversial. We only see a tiny portion of the visible light spectrum. We don't see, X-rays, gamma rays, infrared rays, ultraviolet rays, all these things. We don't perceive these things, but they exist, right? Well, isn't that not showing us what is true? Because they say right here, when we believe that our perceptions and concepts point to the truth, we implicitly acknowledge the existence of a God who designed them. Well, if an intelligent designer designed us, why would they lie to us by filtering out this information? Why are we not experiencing this information if it's there? It's not giving us the truth. And if you have an intelligent designer, why would we not be receiving the truth? So this is evidence against an intelligent designer. That's really bad. Right? This is really bad that they're saying that this is intelligence against this is evidence against an intelligent designer. So the reason why we do filter all this information out is because we want to be focused on that which is best for our adaptation and survival. Now that's not the be end all and end all of evolution and Hyperianism. Dialectical and teleological evolution is not only about survival. It's about it's very complicated, but ultimately about self-transformation, reaching towards a state of ultimate perfection. Now, this is a very long-term goal of the entirety of existence and the universe, but it is not just about survival. It seems like it's about survival in the beginning, because in order to self-actualize and become as expressed as possible, basically to create the most brilliant, optimal, and expressed pattern possible. I think that's a good way to put it in a nutshell. If you want more information, check out my other videos and my books. It's the goal of reality is ultimately to create the most beautiful, most expressed, most perfect, most symmetrical pattern possible, because reality is pattern and expressing itself. And so, when it comes to survival, the reason why it seems like it's survival at first is because, well, you have to be alive in order to self-actualize. Because we are pattern expressed as mathematics, our self-actualization is us creating more actualized patterns. So it seems like it's about survival at first because you need to be alive in order to self-actualize. There must be a vehicle for the goal to be achieved, the teleological goal. So anyway, this whole idea about perceptions being clear evidence for a designer, no, it's evidence against a designer, because our perceptions would more accurately reflect truth than they do. They reflect a tiny portion of what is out there. So, and it says, what about our concepts though? And they believe that our concepts point to truth. Well, guess what? Depends what you mean by concepts, okay? So we could get into a lot about debate about semantics and syntax and epistemology and philosophy of language here. So I don't know what Michael Egnor means by concepts, but it seems like because he doesn't seem like he's going too deep into philosophy here. It seems, more colloquial. These ideas that humans use, that they abstract from existence, abstractions that humans use to mentally categorize and understand existence. Okay, so basically concepts as abstractions in the mind that humans use to understand existence. And again, he's pointing that concepts implicitly acknowledge the existence of God who designed them. Well, first of all, just concepts in general, that's so vague, because if you're talking about, concepts in terms of what? So the problem is that human language is extremely limited. So Wittgenstein showed that human language is extremely limited. So if you're trying to formulate concepts in terms of something like human language, these static concepts cannot capture existence, because reality is in motion, and still concepts cannot accurately reflect a reality in motion. And what I mean by that, I don't mean that concepts don't change. They can if people define them differently, depending on what one means by concept. That's very, very important. And again, it's hard to say what Michael Egnor means by concept, because that's a word that can mean many different things. But essentially, reality is mathematical pattern. So when we try and use words to capture mathematical pattern, it's only an approximation. I could talk to you all day long about what I could try and use words to describe some sort of a mathematical equation to you. but ultimately one can't understand it until one actually understands the math. There are so much detail. Like if you want to know what calculus is, I could talk to you about, instantaneous rate of change, or measuring pebbles with what calculus literally means in terms of area under a curve. We could talk about all these different things. And you could probably get kind of a general idea of what it is, but you're not going to know what it is until you actually understand and do the math. It's completely different. So reality is inherently mathematical. Human invented concepts won't capture what reality actually is. True ontological concepts do. And there is only one ontological concept, and that is the principle of sufficient reason from which all reality stems. Now, again, that gets a little all right, I'm trying to... It depends what one means by ontological, but basically all ontological reality is a result from the principle of sufficient reason, which is the singular ground of all existence that is the reason why all there is. So anyway, my point is, his point is that perceptions and concepts point to the truth. My point is that perceptions don't point to the truth. They're lies, if anything. They show you an illusion of reality. They don't show you what it actually is. They show you the opposite of what is, in many cases. And that concepts point to the truth. Depending on how you define concepts, that's very debatable. Because in terms of human invented concepts, no. In terms of humans discovering the results of the underlying concept of existence, yes. And the reason why is that? Because reality is concept. Think about what mathematics is. Mathematics is concept. It is not something physical. It is not something mind independent. Reality is mind. Reality is mathematics. So reality is concept. And what I mean by that is that it is living reason. It is living mind. Concept is the domain of mind. Concept is the domain of idea. Concept and mathematics is concept. So why do we have conceptions that point to the truth if we're talking about discoverable results from true ontological conception like mathematics? That's because reality is concept. Reality is pattern. And the reason why perceptions don't is because perceptions are just a small experience of the qualitative experience of those concepts filtered through a space-time representation, if we're talking about like in terms of Fourier transforms. Yeah, I talk fast because I want to pack so much information into the small amount of time, because I know that if the video says it's over an hour, less people are going to click on it. So anyway, okay, so let's just continue here. I just really want to point out that what Egnor is criticizing is valid. His conclusion is ridiculously invalid. These are not indications of intelligent design in any shape, way, or form. It's evidence that reality behaves according to pattern and law, which is true. It's a far cry to go from reality as pattern and law to, oh, there must be an intelligent designer, God, who consciously created everything, and he has a son named Jesus who came to earth and died for your sins, and you should drink wine and bread every once in a while so you can remember him. And that's kind of gross, but everyone does it, so people seem to think it's normal. But hey, like, do you see there's it's a big leap being taken here, and it's not one or the other, right? It's not science, it's not scientific materialism, atheism and randomness, or God and faith. There's also reason, mathematics, Hyperianism, understanding that reality is pattern, unfolding, mind. And what's really interesting is that Hyperianism is an idealism. Hyperianism is a mathematical monistic dual aspect monism. And it's kind of a mouthful. But basically what that means is that, it's a monism. There's only one thing, reason. Mathematical, reason expresses itself via mathematics. Dual aspect, Mathematics has two sides to it, form and content. It's rational structure, and then the experience that accompanies that rational structure. And then what was the last one that I said was idealism, that reality is ultimately mind, because reality gets expressed as frequency, and there is no such thing as something that exists independently from mind. If you want to know how mathematics is equivalent to mind, I don't have time to get into here, but it's in my other material. But the reason why I say that it's interesting is because Egnor went from atheistic materialism to an idealist. Like, he's an idealist. It's unclear. Sometimes he says he's a panpsychist. Sometimes he leans towards, it seems like his later stuff, he's going towards idealism, which is the idea that reality is all mind. It's just he thinks we're all in the mind of God, rather than we are all mind experiencing ourselves through our own self-generated unconscious pattern that necessarily exists because of the perfection of mathematics itself, that it must exist. That's okay. Let's go. So it boggles the mind how one can just go from here just all the way to the complete and total opposite when there's no basis for that. There's just no basis whatsoever for that. So note that this argument puts those who deny God's existence in a difficult rhetorical position. If they deny God's existence, they cannot believe that their perceptions and concepts have any orientation to reality. Now, again, that's absolutely untrue. If they deny that reality is inherently patterned, yeah, sure. But not if they deny God's existence. Now, granted, a lot of people can mean different things by God. If you're going to call God simply an unconscious mathematical rational force, if you say what exists is an unconscious mathematical rational force, and you call that God, you put the label God on that, sure, then you can say God exists. But that's not what's being claimed here. This is intelligent design, which implies a conscious self-awareness. And because Michael Egnor is Christian, I'm assuming that all of the Christian attributes of that God also apply. But just by the fact that this is argument for intelligent design implies a conscious creator. And that's not, if they deny God's existence, they cannot believe their perception. No, like, that's just wrong and very deceptive to say that, because I feel like it's almost obviously wrong. But it should be obviously wrong. It should be obviously wrong. So continuing here, Ed Fesser, in his commentary on Taylor's argument, discusses a number of objections that might be raised to Taylor's analogy. He points out that none of the expected argument succeeds. For example, an atheist might argue that we have justifiable inductive reasons for trusting our senses and concepts, even if our brains are not intelligently designed, because we have daily experience that our perceptions and concepts correlate with reality. But this is merely to argue in a circle. If our brain is not intelligently designed to begin with, we have no justification for trusting our inductive reasoning processes or perceptions. Okay, so again, this is like half right, half wrong. If you just because see, it says, for example, an atheist might argue that we have inductive reasons for trusting our senses. We do tests. We can see why we trust our senses. And they're saying that, well, if your brain isn't intelligently designed, you can't trust the fact, you can't trust your own inductive processes, because if there's no intelligent designer, then it's automatically flawed to begin with, the whole process. Again, this is a huge leap. We can know that we can have epistemological knowledge of existence, not through inductive processes. We are not empiricists, so we wouldn't even say that. See, this is saying that essentially that knowledge or justifiable reasons can be given for trusting our senses through so like for induction, with induction. Yeah, so we do not come to knowledge. We're rationalists, so we come to it through reason. And the reason why we can do this, and the reason why we don't trust the senses, this is very odd. They put a lot of emphasis on the senses, and probably because Egnor, I believe, came from an atheistic materialist background and then went over to Christianity. So he's probably in that mindset of induction, testability, sensory data. So Hyperianism is rationalist. And so we do not trust the senses. We know that the senses can deliver a false indication of existence. They deliver Maya, they deliver illusion. And so illusion, delusion works as well. They deliver illusion. And so to continue here, the way that Hyperions come to knowledge, true knowledge, like epistemological knowledge, is through reason, is through mind. That's because reality is mind. It is mathematical mind. So we can use mind, we can use reason to understand itself. And this is very like in terms of like when the great philosopher Hegel says, what is real is rational and what is rational is real. That doesn't mean everything behaves in a rational way, but the substance of reality is a perfect to use sort of like a video game analogy, it's like a perfect code. A reason is the set of laws that allows existence to operate in the way it does and produce the brilliant mathematical patterns that underlie all reality and all existence. So the point is that you can use reason to discover the truth about existence because reality is rational. And once again, our brains don't have to be intelligently designed for us to be able to use reason. If reality is inherently built on reason and mathematics and pattern, then that means our brain will automatically exhibit the functionality for this. Now, I want to remind you as well, in Hyperianism, we are not our brains. And it's interesting that Egnor is so heavily focusing on the brain in terms of concepts because Egnor, his position is that the brain can't account for consciousness. That's the whole reason why he stopped becoming an atheist materialist. So it's interesting that he's putting so much of a reliance on concepts and whatnot with relation to the brain, because the brain cannot account for consciousness. So anyway, in Hyperianism, we are eternal monadic minds, which are collections of mathematics, a complete and consistent set of mathematics, a complete and consistent set of Fourier basis waves. We are mathematical beings in a nutshell, and we link to these bodies as avatars. The brain is a filtering mechanism and a localizer as well. It allows the mind, which is a non-local entity, to experience a local filtered domain to be able to explore, learn, and grow in a localized environment. And so what was my point? Reality is formed by these patterns. Reality are these patterns. There's nothing but these patterns. So we as minds and our brain, which facilitates and conditions certain processes, allows us for rational conception, because it's what reality is made of. You don't need an intelligent designer. So Taylor's argument for God's existence is also a good argument for intelligent design of the brain. As I noted, the evidence for intelligent design, and I guess to be fair to Michael, I guess that was Taylor's or Ed's commentary, not necessarily Michael. So perhaps Michael doesn't have that position, but he pointed it out, so he obviously finds it convincing, I would assume. Taylor's argument for God's existence is also a good argument for intelligent design of the brain. As I noted, the evidence for intelligent design of the brain is massive and undeniable. No, it's not at all, period. Again, as I noted, the evidence for intelligent design of the brain is massive and undeniable. That's a lie. The evidence for the brain exhibiting beautiful pattern and following laws, yes, that's massive and undeniable. Not intelligent design. Again, if there was if inscribed on the brain was made by God, that would be massive and undeniable evidence for intelligent design. There isn't evidence for a conscious intelligent design. There is evidence for a process of pattern and law being intrinsic to the nature of reality. That's not intelligent design. Entails a conscious being applicable of consciously applying knowledge and being self-aware, and there's a lot that comes along with this. So it's just such a lie. It's not massive and undeniable in any sense at all. There is none. It's evidence for there being pattern and rational coordination. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't rule out intelligent design. There are lots of things that do rule out intelligent design that what video? I've done so many videos on how you can know for sure that God does not exist. Like it's a logical impossibility for the God of the Bible as described in Christianity. Impossible for that God to exist. Totally and completely impossible. So there was tons of evidence for against intelligent design. But anyway, it just boggles my mind that you can say that it's just massive and undeniable. No, it's not massive and undeniable. Massive and undeniable would be something massive and undeniable. It's not massive. If it were massive and undeniable, because it's not, intelligent design is not something subtle. This is a super being. They can do anything. I mean, it depends what your position is. There's a lot of people who could say different things about intelligent designer, but since Michael Egnor is a Christian, I'm assuming he applies the typical attributes to God. I mean, unless he has like an Aristotelian view of God, but that doesn't, no, see, so anyway, just to be fair, I don't know what the attributes he applies to God, but because he's talking about intelligent design, which is clearly not in accord with some sort of unconscious, just perfect being like an Aristotelian prime mover or something like that. It's not. It's intelligent design is intelligent design. It could be clearly indicated. You know, I mean, if that were true, God could right now, if he wanted, inscribe on the moon, "I am God. Believe in Jesus." And you know, if that happened, I think that there would be a lot more credibility in taking intelligent design seriously. Now, would that prove that there was intelligent designer? No. I mean, it could be, you know, like I'm just saying randomly, it could be aliens fucking with us. It could be, you know, a number of things, but that would be massive evidence, right? Like that would be massive evidence. That would not. Anyway, it's just, there is massive evidence for the brain being a result or based on pattern and rational law. Yes. But not for an intelligent designer. So he continues, the nice thing about Taylor's argument is that it logically compels atheists and others who deny intelligent design to also deny their capacity to know reality and truth. No, it doesn't at all, because, for atheists, no. Just for anyone, you can deny intelligent design and also not deny the capacity to know reality and truth. That is so fallacious, I don't even know where to begin. Unless he has a very, very strange conception of what intelligent design means, but it does not seem so. That's not the case whatsoever. You do not deny your capacity to know reality and truth because you deny an intelligent designer. No. Because if reality is inherently rational and a result of pattern, that means we are pattern and we have this capability and we can know ourselves. That's to know reality and know truth is to know ourselves, because we are pattern. There is nothing but pattern. And when we know what existence is, we are knowing what we are. That's why, you know, it's been said, inscribed at the temple of the Oracle at Delphi was know thyself. And a longer version of that is know thyself and you will know the universe and the gods. It's because when you know yourself, you will know that we are the universe and the gods. Reality is pattern. We are that pattern. There is no problem with us knowing ourselves as pattern knowing itself. That's just, you're just having a self-referential pattern. You're having a pattern that develops the ability, the pattern, to reference itself. It's very, it's like a feedback loop. It's similar to like a fractal in a certain way, but very much like a feedback loop. So, of course, the lack of the capacity to understand reality and know truth is a hallmark of atheism and of the denial of intelligent design. And Taylor's argument provides a clear and quite clever way of pointing that out. And so that's the end of this article here. So Michael Egnor, interesting individual, you know, started out as an atheist, materialist, but then he went all the way to like Christianity, and you don't have to make these big loops. So now Michael has a lot of stances that I disagree with a lot. And the idea here is that I want to show you that, so Michael Egnor is neurosurgeon saying that, oh, there's clear, undeniable evidence for intelligent design in the brain. No, there's not at all. And I want to make this clear because you're going to see arguments like this all the time. Like in the example with the rocks, they ended up arguing for something different than I thought they were going to do in the beginning. They had to do more with understanding and semantic information. But what I was talking about first, about seeing things arranged in a certain way, certain patterns in reality, and that meaning that there is an intelligent designer, that's such bad reasoning, that's such a huge leap that it's ridiculous. So you'll see this all this time. It's also often called like the blind watchmaker argument. Many of these arguments, and just don't fall for that shit. You know, in a nutshell, just realize all the evidence that intelligent designers are pointing out, all the evidence, it's not evidence for intelligent design. It's evidence for pattern. That supports our position. They don't have any evidence for intelligent design. They have evidence for pattern that could imply an intelligent designer. It could be. I mean, it can. I've shown in other videos why it can't, with regard to at least the Christian religion. But it's not this. All it is evidence for that there is pattern in the universe. Could a God have created that pattern? Well, maybe. I mean, no, I've shown it, but just in our thought experiment, maybe. But just because there's pattern doesn't mean that that's the case. It could be. You see, it's a big leap. If reality is in itself pattern, then there is no intelligent designer. So you can't make that huge leap. So just remember, every time intelligent designers are coming up with all this evidence for intelligent design, it's not. It's evidence for pattern that they are then foisting on their explanation to pattern as God. So, and I mean, yeah, you could call this evidence if you want, but it's not. It doesn't. They're making a huge leap that doesn't follow, because they're not claiming that. Oh well, maybe such and such. No, they're saying this is evidence for an intelligent designer that consciously created me and you. So go love Jesus right now, or you're gonna go to hell. That's not. You can't do that after going like, oh wow, this flower is really beautiful. It exhibits these certain patterns, and oh look at this particular broccoli that exhibits fractal geometry. Like no, it's evidence for pattern, which is a beautiful thing. This is a beautiful reality, and it's a product of ultimately our creation, because all there is pattern, and we are expressions of that pattern. And so we are patterns within patterns, exploring more patterns. That's what we are. And no intelligent designer is necessary. No intelligent designer is needed. So always remember that. All right. There's not this. Don't fall for this weird false dichotomy of either atheistic materialist science or intelligent designer faith, God. No, that is absolute bullshit. That's in a complete and total false dichotomy. What is true? There is no conscious intelligent designer like the kind of. There's no independent creator God. That's a logical impossibility. I've said in the context of this video, maybe there is, in terms of a thought experiment. In actuality, no, it can't be at all. It's a logical impossibility. There's no such thing as mind dependent in the existence, and there's no such thing as a creator God that is independent from you or I. I could just go on and on, but that'd be a whole video unto itself, and I'm sure I've done a video on that before. But anyway, just don't fall for that. All right. There is clear evidence for pattern all around you. It's beautiful. Intelligent designers will point out that pattern all the time and go like, yeah, hey, yeah, it's a beautiful pattern. Doesn't mean that I got to go to church and sing some songs or else I'm going to go to hell. So I hope you enjoyed this video and really got something from it. Remember, I'm always so frustrated with the time constraints, but check out my other videos for more explanations on all the things that I talked about today. And I want to give a big shout out to everyone that supports on Patreon, especially Renaissance Fairy, Trent, Cassidy, Michael, Evie, Alan, Angela, Maria, Brian, Chubby Bunny, High Expectation Counseling, and Jordy, and everyone else who supports. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. If you ever feel like you've learned something or gotten something from my videos, consider supporting on Patreon. Helps out a lot. The link will pop up right over here. You'll get access to our weekly secret live streams, our hidden Discord server, the Citadel, and more. And I appreciate it. It really helps. So thank you very much.